Hi, my name is Katarina. I'm a president of the VEO Executive Academy Female Leaders Network. We're a community built for our students and alumna with a mission to create more equitable future for all. One of the ways we do it is by inspiring community and bringing very important topics that support us in our careers and also in personal growth journeys. Today, we talk about a very important topic, which is resilience. We're in a time of constant change where we need to adapt, learn, support and lead others. And it's very tiring. I think everybody can relate to that. Big part of it is actually the conflicts and misunderstandings. And what challenges come our way, we cannot choose that, but how we react, we definitely are in control of that. And if we would just reflect in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I'm sure, at least I speak for myself, there would have been a better ways to react to some of the situations. So I'm very excited. I have my notebook here. I will take a lot of notes today and learn. I'm very excited. And it's a pleasure to have one of our alumni and a true expert on emotional intelligence with us. I will invite my dear colleague, Martina Ernst, and also a friend to introduce Gabriela. And thank you, Martina, for organizing this event for us. Enjoy it.
Hello everyone, on behalf of our Female Leaders Network, also a very warm welcome to everyone to this powerful Lunch and Learn session. Many of us joining today have embarked on an MBA journey, making a significant investment in our careers. And yet we all know, in the VUCA worlds we live in, building a career today is anything but simple. Why? Because success is not only about professional effort, it's more than ever about our emotional well-being. And the question is always, how do we cope with the ever-increasing levels of uncertainty, complexity, and stress? And this has become a defining factor for our success. Because if we don't know how to deal with our triggers to pressure, to power struggles, to escalation, and to blockages, we do not lead, we react. So today, let's shift our focus. Let's make sure that we stay grounded, calm, and effective. And let's dive into the playbook of resilience together with Dr. Gabriele Langyou'll. We have known Gabi for many years, and she has truly been an inspiration to us, the Female Leaders Network. She has given us unwavering support, and she has built her career with true brilliance and real perseverance. Gabi has a doctorate in psychology. She has vast managerial experience in companies like Coca-Cola, Mondi, Egon Zehnder, and she's an expert for leadership and effective collaboration in challenging situations. And she's the founder of Create Success Consulting and the e-platform Up and Change. With her vision to support 1,000 managers over the next 5 years in becoming effective leaders, even in times of stress. She supports managers and teams to turn friction losses into productivity and impact. And now, without further ado, let me hand over to Gabriele and learn from her motto. You cannot prevent challenges, but learn to master them and eventually enjoy them. So, Gabi, please.
Thank you, Martina, for the lovely words and a warm welcome also from me. And the motto Martina just said is something I really live up to. So are you ready to see how you can stay calm even when friction steals your energy? Then put yes in the chat and we'll start straight away and we'll hop into the presentation. Perfect. So everyone ready? So let's see how we can keep our resilience in pressure moments. And at the beginning, I presume you all know that. You perhaps love your job, yeah? You are well educated because you've done all your education at the WU Executive Academy, of course. And still, there are moments where you get out of a meeting and you're enervated, or you have to deal with difficult personalities which drain your energy and get on your nerves. Yeah. And it can be that you're very well educated in everything, and still you can do your scopes well, but still there's a sudden, look from somebody, there's an emotional trigger, there's defensiveness, and suddenly you're not that calm anymore. And most professionals and most executives, most managers don't lose their resilience in moments of calmness, but then when triggers hit in, when their emotions hit in. And that's something we'll have a look at today. Yeah. And you leave today with a few tips from my side, what you can do then in the moment of stress. Who I am, Martina already introduced me, but what I combine are the insights of psychology, of business, but also systemic work. I've been working for over 30 years in corporates, but also in my own companies. I'm an entrepreneur of 2 companies. And in 2006, I had this moment where from the outside, I looked very successful. And I was successful if you looked at my salary and my reputation and my track record. But the inside picture was quite a different one. And that was when I started looking inside, doing the inner work. And where I really got the excitement, then if you look at that, if you focus your energy on that, then you will really be a leader, also under pressure. And what I've personally made is this journey from freeze to impact. What does that mean? I used to have certain interesting bosses who tended to be quite loud when they were stressed out. You can also say choleric, yeah? And that made me freeze. And freeze was that I just went quiet, I didn't do anything. And perhaps the one person reacts the same way, but I didn't want to do that because I left quite a lot of energy and of my intelligence in the quietness and in pulling back. And I wanted to change certain things. I wanted to be impactful. And that's why I'm sharing the following insights with you, because I think that's the real power competence nowadays. If you can stay calm and factual, even in pressure moments. So the good news is, when you go into the next difficult situations, please keep that in mind. It's a growth engine. So don't get annoyed about it, but see it as a learning possibility. And as Martina already said, you can even enjoy it because it's an area where you can gain a lot. Yeah. And that's more or less the mindset we will walk you through. I will walk you through today. So what are we going to cover? We are first going to cover what is pressure moments, what are triggers. Yeah. Then I'll share some tips concerning filling your resilience playbook. And then, of course, you'll have the possibilities of asking your questions. And because that's usually the beauty, that you can really then unmute and ask questions and use my brain and experience for your answers. So we are doing it interactive. So Viola has helped with a few questions we are going to do. So if you look at your stress level at work at the moment, yeah, there's no right or wrong, then use this QR code and we will go into a Mentimeter. And the question is, what's your current stress level? Are you absolutely chilled, like no stress? So like you were on holiday lying on the beach, or are you extremely stressed out? And we are going to hop now into the next and see what your results are. So let's see. How are you feeling today? Okay. Still people, so an average of 5.8. So it's above average, yeah. 7 seems to be the highest score. So that's already stressed, yeah. Fortunately enough, not that you're sort of nearly collapsing, but 6 on average does mean you are stressed. So let's have a look. That's a good precondition. So as I said, see stress and friction as something positive. So we'll go back to the presentation again. Perfect that we've done this Mentimeter and it worked out. That's always a big relief in these live webinars. Yeah. So let's see. I've got an insight. 10% is what happens to you. So the situation, the trigger, but 90% is in your capability of how you respond. Isn't that a power? I think, looking at that, it doesn't seem like you're powerless, especially if you look at the world being very uncertain at the moment and quite a lot of things, happening outside of our circle of influence. But if you take this formula and truly I live after this formula, you've got the capability of changing and becoming impactful. And I love this attitude and this mindset because it already changes a lot. So have a look. What is stress? Because stress is something we say a lot of times, I'm stressed out, don't ask me, there's so much pressure, there's so much going around me. So it is exactly a moment where you don't feel secure, calm, and socially connected. That's usually what stress is. And we have a certain response as human beings to demands, challenges, but also to danger or certain triggers, and threats. And it is caused by internal causes, but also external causes. And what happens then if stress hits us, then our body tries to react and regain again this internal balance. That's what happens when you are hit by stress. And it is more or less where the situation isn't neutral again. So I'm not going down deeply into biology and neurology, but I do want to share that there's certain stress reactions. And probably most of these terminologies you've already heard, but I want to say, if there's a certain threat, but it's not extreme, we usually automatically react with fight. So that's we argue, we push back, we want to prove ourselves. But some, and it's nothing where you sort of decide, wait a minute, let's see, shall we flight or shall we fight? But it's automatic. You've got no choice to think about that. Some react automatically with flight. What does that mean? They withdraw, they become quiet, they postpone or they avoid the situation. As a leader, of course, not very impactful, because if you avoid the confrontation, and you can't fight for your topic, not against people, but fight for the topic, you've lost anyway. But then there's also something which I think is interesting, which happens quite often, which is fawn. And that's something where you want to please. So somebody is threatening you, or you personally feel threatened. That doesn't mean the other one is really threatening, but you feel threatened. And you start over explaining, you start pleasing, doing more, going into over responsibility, taking too much responsibility. That's what we call fawn as a stress reaction. And then, of course, the danger, the threat, the pressure can get even more extreme. And that's when people can react with freeze. That's really, do you know this situation where something happens and you can't move? It's sort of really as if you've become an iceberg, and that's freeze, and collapse is more or less fainting, and that's extreme danger. And why is that so important? Not to bore you with some theory, but it is interesting to know that for everything which is following afterwards, because if you just look very simply at this brain, the cortex, so the rational thinking, if you're not calm, forget it, out of the window. So you are threatened, and when there's danger, short danger, so within seconds, there's two stress axes which then appear. The one is sort of the fast axis, where adrenaline and noradrenaline are hit out. And that's important because you become more alert. That's your heart rate speeds up, your blood pressure gets higher, and you've got faster breathing. And that was very important when you think ages ago and you were standing in front of a tiger, which rarely happens nowadays, especially if you're in Vienna or in Bucharest or wherever you're living, yeah. But still, it was very good then, because when you were sitting or standing in front of a tiger, it was quite good, if your legs moved quickly then, and sort of you were alert, yeah, and not sort of strolling down the road, yeah. But if stress continues, long-term, for example, yeah, a long-term risk, then it's the slow axis, and that has a lot to do with the cortisol. So if you've ever gone to a blood examination, you usually check your cortisol level, and if that's very high, it's usually not a good sign, because that means you're under stress all the time, yeah, because of personalities you are dealing with, perhaps because external conditions are hitting you, or because the work conditions are stressing you long term. And that's important, because then you are sort of in an endurance mode. Yeah, you've got the energy for a long-term run, more or less. Yeah, even under pressure. But that, of course, has a cost, because it influences not only your metabolism, but it also influences your immune system. And what usually hardly anyone in organizations, hardly any manager really sees, because it's not in a balance sheet, but still impacts your level of engagement and your success rate, is the hidden cost of such stress. And that's high. KPMG has studies that friction loss, conflict, so everything which has to do with stress, with pressure, with threatening you, costs managers up to 50% of their time. Just imagine, you could stay at home 50% and put your feet on the table, if you didn't have stress. Yeah. Also engagement rate. Probably quite a lot of you already know the Gallup study, but only 15% of our employees are really engaged at work. Yeah. The rest already has more or less quit within them, or they're sort of dropping their pen at a certain time. Yeah. Which is also interesting. IKEA did a study how stress impacts our sleep. And probably most of you know, if something or somebody is bothering you, and it doesn't really matter if it's privately or business-wise, that's the interesting part of this webinar. You can use all this knowledge for private, also for relationships, yeah, because there's concerning stress, there's hardly any difference between private and business-wise. Except for business-wise, you can usually get out of the office or out of the company eventually, which is a bit more tricky, if it's your partner who's stressing you. But sleep, imagine 53% of the women and 42% of the men say they don't sleep well, because they are tossing backwards and forwards in bed, turning and worrying and brooding. Imagine. So you could also save half of the sleep because you're not sleeping anyway, yeah? And that's usually, it also happens with me, even though I've studied psychology and do quite a lot of mental hygiene. And that's when then people get notices from WhatsApp or something at 2 o'clock in the morning and ask me why I was awake, yeah? But the most important for organizations, it costs up to 90% of company cost. So where should you put your energy as a manager, as somebody in charge of a company? On reducing the stress level and staying impactful and staying calm, even if there's pressure. So let's dive into stress typology, because the past 15 years, I loved watching people in organizations, but also privately, and seeing, how they react. And some of you have done the stress type check anyway. Don't hesitate. Don't get stressed here if you haven't, because you'll have the chance at the very end too. But what I've discovered is there are 4 stress typologies. And I'll explain those. The tiger. First of all, extrovert, introvert. That's the first dimension. So some people in stress, and we're not talking here of reactions when you've got holiday and you are relaxed. This is stress reaction. There's no right or wrong, so no better or worse, yeah? But the aim of everything in this stress typology is to stay balanced under pressure with these dimensions. So ideally, you would be quite balanced concerning in stress, being extrovert or introvert. So being loud or being quiet. Reflecting, that's the introvert, or sort of turning towards people. And then there's a second dimension, which is out of the head, which means you've got a plan, yeah, you have a scope list, yeah, and you do things. So those are the people who do even under pressure, pom 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 pom. The out of gut are interesting because those are the people who let it flow even under stress, yeah. And everything has its advantages and disadvantages, because if the out of head gets too extreme, you get rigid. But if the out of gut gets extreme, what happens? You end up in chaos. Yeah, because I used to always think, the one side is better than the other. No. Yeah, you need diversity in the team, but when there's stress, when there's pressure, ideally you don't have extreme typologies. So let's see, what's the tiger? The motto of the tiger is get it done. Yeah, and we'll see, wait a minute, I'm going further. Yeah, here, left top, tiger. If he's calm or she's calm, so don't wonder if he, it's too difficult. So it can be that I sometimes say she or sometimes he, I mean both, yeah. A tiger in his good, calm state is a courageous decision maker. So he's very good in making decisions. If he's under stress, the tiger tends to be extrovert, but also working after plan. So he's like an attacking tiger. How do you recognize that? With yourself, but also with other people, because that's the beauty of stress typologies. Those are the people who become impatient under stress, who interrupt you, who talk loudly, yeah, who come with the tons of facts, yeah, who are very assertive, who are very direct, very harsh, yeah, decision making, yeah, controlling, and who suppress all the feelings and emotions, yeah. And if it gets extreme, those are the people who say, I've got enough. And if it gets very extreme, they are emotionally detached. Those are the people who you can't see what they feel. But it's like a tiger. Imagine a tiger, one paw and you're dead. So the motivation of a tiger is getting things done, speed. So if a tiger is under pressure, he wants to get it done. That's the motto. So you can write, and if you do screenshots, remember, tiger, get it done. He hates losing control. That's danger for him, even more danger. He hates uncertainty. So if somebody doesn't know the numbers, and this tiger also hates a lack of commitment. And what stresses him is breaking the rules of the game, silence, fear. So if you're shaking like a leaf in front of a tiger, that doesn't impress him, but that stresses him. And slowness. Imagine a tiger now with a tortoise. Where's the tortoise? The tortoise is here. The most extreme, the persons in stress, under pressure in organizations, a tiger hates is a tortoise, because that's the most extreme difference to a tiger, because that's the person who's then introvert and out of the gut. You can imagine, diversity is beautiful for creativity, But in stress, awful. You'd like somebody who reacts totally like you. So let's have a look. That was the tiger, the attacking tiger. But under stress, you also have the angry dolphins. That's my lovely stress typology. And I really had to learn about this, the dolphin. The dolphin is the charming communicator. Often people in sales are charming communicators, but be aware if they are pressurized, because then they emotionally overreact. In extreme cases, they get choleric. They accuse you. If it's right or wrong, doesn't matter really. They have emotional outbursts. They misinterpret the reality and facts, so they turn them around a bit, yeah? And if you do something which annoys a dolphin, this person would say, wait a minute, I'll show this other one my power, you know? And if somebody's like furious over you, yeah, then you can imagine that's not the nicest reaction you want to experience. The motivation of a dolphin is to be recognized. The person wants to be seen, not only as a person, but also their feelings. So the fear is of a dolphin not being heard, making mistakes. He's absolutely dreading that somebody realizes he's not so brilliant. And he's afraid of being replaced. So that's the dolphin, and he's stressed by humiliation, arrogance, people deciding above his head or her head, somebody scolding or shouting at him, yeah, and ignoring him. Ignore a dolphin and you will realize how he can get choleric. So that's the dolphin. Remember, tiger, get it done, dolphin, get acknowledged. But now we come to the other axis. And that always is nice because you think it's quiet. That's nice because the loud ones you usually hear. But the quiet ones can be as dangerous if you don't recognize your own behavior under pressure, but also somebody else. Let's have a look at the working bee. So a working bee is a reliable doer. That's the perfect people in your team. Yeah. But under stress, a working bee with a tendency to be perfect. Sounds brilliant, but has its downsides. Yeah. So under pressure, they get pessimistic, the working bee, skeptical. They overanalyze everything. Yeah. They withdraw. And the reaction of a working bee is, oh, I have to do everything. It's just too much. And in extreme cases, they just turn rigid. So, what's the motivation of a working bee? Getting the things done, not only done, but right. That's the difference to the tiger. They want to be perfect. And they hate criticism and rejection. So if it was children, it would be, I don't like you in kindergarten. Yeah, that would hurt and kill a working bee anyway. And what stresses a working bee? It's attacks, accusations, and attempts to motivate. If you are a working bee, you hate it if somebody says, oh, come on, not so bad. That's terrible for a working bee. But there's a second animal which is also quite in stress under pressure. So when friction or conflicts hit, that's the tortoise. That's the calm observer in calm circumstances. But if under stress, they withdraw. The shutter just closes and you can do whatever you want to. They don't appear again. It's radio silence. Yeah. And some people get, can you imagine a dolphin and a tiger with a tortoise? They get absolutely balmy because the person just doesn't come out again, stays silent, and withdraws. And of course, we've got different, levels of that. Yeah. What is motivating for a tortoise? Feeling good and just perceiving. And they've got the absolute fear of conflict and aggression. So can you imagine a tiger and a tortoise in a meeting room with no knowledge of stress typologies and no knowledge how to deal with them and what to do and what not to do? Incredible. And what is stressing a tortoise? If the tortoise has withdrawn, you would hit his, panzer and say, come on, and come on, and do it, and you just talk and talk and talk and talk. The tortoise hates that. So pressure is lethal with tortoises. So after explaining the stress typologies, let's see what your stress typology is. We've got our Mentimeter again. So are you a tiger? And it doesn't really matter. I'm not proving if it's right or wrong. So I'm not causing stress now and seeing how you react, yeah, because that's difficult digitally. But just from your gut feeling, what would you be? Would you be, and we'll turn here again to our Mentimeter. Just wait a minute, to the Mentimeter. Here we have to now, wait a minute. I have to, here, next. So, let's see, what's your default pressure pattern? Tiger, bee, tortoise, dolphin. So just as remember, tiger, get it done. Working bee, be perfect. Dolphin, get acknowledged. Tortoise, get along. So we seem to have working bees. So the working bees are the ones which are very familiar to me, because guess what? I'm a working bee. By the way, what is interesting, because it doesn't mean if you're a working bee in every private and business situation, you're a working bee. Usually if you have a certain dimension like introversion or extroversion, which is stronger than the out of head and out of guard, it depends. For example, if you are more the out of your head person, then sometimes it can be that a working bee also develops to a tiger. My business partner is also in the webinar, Barbara. She knows exactly when I've got tiger tendencies, yeah? But the good thing is, and that's the beauty of this whole thing, she already knows our stress types, what you do, what you don't do, and so we know how to behave then, yeah? But that's interesting. So we seem to have more working bees. Let's see, because we prepared for this whole thing and we did an evaluation. And let's see, today at roughly 11, we had 49 people of you already filling out the stress type check. And it also shows here the working bees won more or less, yeah? But the interesting thing is followed by the tigers. What does it mean? We are a group today which are extremely in stress, under plan, fulfilling scopes. That's more or less the tendency here in the group, yeah? And not the ones be spontaneous under stress and under pressure and let it flow, yeah? So we haven't got, most of us are not, scared by chaos, but more about rigidity. And if you compare that with our database, you can see, what is the database, yeah? We've got in the database, and we've got over 1,000 people already who've done the stress type check. We've got most of them the working bees. And that, my assumption and hypothesis behind that is that the working bee, of course, has a certain pressure, because usually in over responsibility, and that's why they are interested in doing things and learning about what can they do better. Yeah. So let's see. And that's where we get into the next. What is resilience? Resilience is this capability of staying calm and factual, even if you're under pressure, even if you're under stress. And that's so important for nowadays manager, I mean, for every person, of course, but especially for people in charge of other people, in charge of visions and, fulfilling scopes and getting results. Yeah. So that's what is resilience. And the challenges are not the problem, but the challenge is what you make of them. So let's see. I'll give you 4 tips now, what you can do. The first one I want to do is the impact formula. So if the next time you are hit by stress, then follow this circle. The first thing is learn to perceive what is happening. So what is happening from my feeling status and my body feelings? And that seems so simple. Still, I know so many executives from coaching and from all my last 30 years and the past 20 years where I've studied challenges and people with fascination, where quite a lot of people can't feel and don't perceive what is happening because they don't take the time. So if you have the capability, and that's why quite a lot of people like doing meditations, like doing journaling, not because it's so exciting, but because it gives you a moment of peace. It gives you a moment to feel and think what is happening in your body, in your soul, and in your head from your mind. Make that conscious. That's the second step. Make it conscious. And then you've got the choice. You can take accountability or not. And believe me, roughly, I would say 80% of the people just don't take responsibility, but fall into the pattern of moaning, accusing, and saying, it's Martina's fault. That's not taking accountability. So accept it, take accountability. As I always tell my teenage boy, yeah, who hates having a psychologist as a mother sometimes, I presume, yeah, is if you've got a misthoff, a dump, yeah, you don't take the whole load. You only take what is your accountability. If you take the whole one, it's over accountability. That's not what the impact formula is about. So that's the third step. You take accountability, and then you can still leave the circle. You can stay passive, do nothing, over adapt, agitate is a form of passivity. That's like running around like hysteric, yeah, but not really doing anything, yeah, or properly following vision or goals or objectives. So become active. Become curious. That's the first step of becoming active, is curiosity like a child. And then targeted action. And I'll give you a certain further tips now anyway for filling your resilience playbook. And you learn. If you make mistakes, so what? Who cares? It's your life. It's your career. It's your impact. So learn and continue. And then you can shape the future. If you're the pilot in your plane, you can shape the future. So if the next stressful situation happens, if the next stress hits, then start again. Second tip is the advice for your stress typology. You know now, are you the tiger? Are you the dolphin? Are you the working bee? Or are you the tortoise? So if you did the stress type check and you've got the chance at the very end, you'll get your first tips. And if you want to go more into detail, there's a stress type guide with all the do's and don'ts. But I can't read as quickly as you, or I can't talk as quickly as you can read. So take your stress typology and take this as motto for your life. If I'm a working bee, I need to let go. Who cares about perfection? If you're an entrepreneur, you have to get these things done. Then learn and then do it again. and to delegate. So, second tip, advice for your stress typology. Third, your 3-second pause. When you're triggered, you've got a script. Before you answer, you pause, you feel your feet or your backside on the seat or on the floor where you're sitting, yeah? And you exhale longer than you inhale. That brings your body tension down. Believe me saying this once or you already having heard that doesn't mean that in stress you will automatically do it. You need conditioning, you need practice, because that's why I showed you the brain, not to bore you, but to show you the cortex is out of the window, has walked away. So you have to condition your body that you don't react with fight and flight and fawn automatically. That's the third tip. And the fourth tip, a pattern interrupt question. When someone blames you, when someone criticizes you or attacks you or creates fog, you know, manipulation likes creating fog where you don't know, are you a man or a woman anymore? Yeah. Then you've got certain options. Learn them, practice them. So that's interesting. What is the concrete issue we need to solve now? Or if you like it better, what would a constructive next step look like from your perspective? Especially ideal for dolphins, get them to think. You know, make them go into their creativity. Why should you bring up? So don't start, wait a minute, we could do A, we could do B, could do C. It even stresses you more because you have to come up with options. So open-ended question. Or before we go further, let us separate assumptions from facts. So these are like little, in your toolkit, little sentences you can use in stressful situations, but you have to practice them. Sometimes you will think of that afterwards and think, oh yeah, that would have been a good reaction. Still happens to me sometimes. But the beauty, and that's where I often already are, is in stress to capture all these things and have your playbook of resilience not only completed, but also automized. Yeah. So, what now? You've got the choice. I'm giving you a toolkit. I'm giving you the first tips with everything you've learned in your life already. If you have the next challenge, if somebody criticizes, gives you a bad look, you know, or is a pain in your ... then you've got 3 choices. You can ignore it and ignore your stress symptoms. That's more or less you compensate, you walk away, and you don't look into your stress patterns. You can also take a headache tablet and only treat your symptoms. What I know the beauty is, and what sustainable success is all about, is learning to master the challenges. That's what I would advise you. But you know, life gives you opportunities. You can take them or you can, you know, throw them out of the window. It's your choice. But I can tell you the benefit and the cost and the energy you gain is beautiful in the area of learning to master it. That's all what I do every day with executives and with teams. So now here we are. I've given you quite a lot of information now. And of course, it's like the tip of an iceberg. Yeah. But we are now at 48 and we've got another 12 minutes. So let's put it roughly 10 minutes. And yeah, what question have you got? Put them in the chat. And
Gabi, we already have one
Yes.
question from William. William is asking, question for have you looked at how these typologies relate to other personality tests like DISC, Myers-Briggs, etc.? Some of the descriptions you mentioned seem to have lots of overlap with the major profiles that I remember from the DISC tests I took a while ago.
William, brilliant question. Of course, I'm a psychologist, so we needed to look at all these different personality tests. And also I worked for Egon Center where we were using Hogan tests, Myers-Briggs, and so on. So the basis of the stress typologies, where I started off 15 years ago, was Myers-Briggs dimensions, yeah, energy patterns, certain Riemann, for example, different fears, of personalities. So the difference I see is this is stress behavior. So this has nothing to do about your personality. It doesn't mean that's how you are. It is how you behave in certain stress reactions. So yes, some of the influences of a load of different personality tests, but also fear tests have, also flown into developing the stress typologies. But the focus is on stress behavior, and it's supposed to give you a guidebook, a menu card for stressful situations where somebody reacts totally different than you, that you know what am I allowed to do and what am I not allowed to do. So it's very practical, and do it with your team. Everyone can do the stress type check and then understand why people are behaving differently. Does that answer your question? Just put it in the chat or unmute or whatever. I can continue, but
Yeah, it makes sense. That's kind of what I was thinking as well, because I know I guess the basis for it is different, but um, like I said, I was just hearing a lot of the same personality traits that came up in the disc profile with how we were addressing each other in terms of being like, oh, this is a big D talking to a big S, like, they need to address it like this. And yeah, like personality and how you naturally work versus how you are under stress can be two different things. But I saw a lot of overlap, so I just wanted to put that out there.
yeah, and that's I've done so many tests over the years, and there's no right or wrong or better or worse. You learn, if you're interested in learning about yourself, and that's if you take away one thing from today, it is about the better you know yourself under pressure, the better the chances that you'll be impactful, calm, and factual under pressure. And that means you'll be a great leader. Because the people, if you look, I just read the escalation curve is high up. The World Uncertainty Index is high up. So if you then look, and I'm not mentioning names, you can imagine, but if you've got managers and people like politicians responsible for a lot of people and a lot of resources, like children in a sandpit throwing sand at each other, then it'll escalate. And the power competence, and that's all about power competence and competence of assertiveness, if somebody's not willing to collaborate, is you staying calm, using your brain, and then using your toolkit with violent communication, understanding how it escalates, detecting manipulative or combat techniques, and then, making boundaries, but being capable of enabling collaboration. Otherwise, you can't de-escalate.
Which brings us to one question Bogdan has asked. How do you actually condition your brain not to automatically react? Trigger is usually
Practice, practice, practice. I tell you, as an entrepreneur, I've got an aim of being 7-digit. For 5 months now, every morning, I'm manifesting certain things so that my brain and my automatic thoughts under pressure are twisted in a positive way. It's all about conditioning. In psychology, we had to condition, I can remember my grandma, you had to condition with light, and the eye bulb and so on, and, do it 1,000 times. That's more or less what you do. Practice, practice, practice. But first perceive it. If you detect the trigger already, you're already a mile further than most people. So my advice to you, and I hope it answers the question, is detect your behavior and then practice. Get the tools, use the tricks I gave you today, collect tools, techniques, and so on, put them in your box and practice them. And then eventually, under pressure, you'll also stay calm and able to be impactful.
Thanks, Gabi, very much. I usually
You're welcome.
detect it, but even the detection is right after.
True. It's another question.
Someone wrote so nicely to this question, Bogdan. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom.
Wonderful,
and our power
Thomas. That's
to
wonderful.
choose our response.
Yeah, and you know what the sad thing is, or I always see everything positive, yeah, is we've got so much unleashed potential. We can, unleash so much potential. So why don't you do it? Just go for it. Make conflict something beautiful, nothing you're scared of. Most managers tell me, I have no conflict. In the second sentence, they are moaning about something. And I think, okay, so what's that now? But anyway, it's change your mindset. How do you change your mindset? You just train it. How do you let go? That's the way you let go.
Can I say something to Bogdan? Because it's very relatable. One thing that we should remember from Gabi, this breathe out 3 seconds. This is something we can do. Start with that. I think that's an easy, quick win, one little thing. And I would also be very curious to know, how can we learn more? I mean, this sounds very useful and interesting, but Gabi, how can we, take it to the next level? Can you recommend any resources or practices that we can implement?
Yeah, I think the best thing is if you start training your mindset, that you can't prevent the challenges, you can't change certain external conditions, but stay in your circle of influence and learn to master and learn from them. See them as something beautiful. Remember the formula. 90% is how you react. So you are powerful, you are power competent, yeah? So you become active. That's what you can do. And I've got here first easy steps. Yeah, I give impulses in the newsletters, which get out 2 or 3 times a month. Yeah, you can, for example, subscribe for free for the newsletter. We've got 4 freebies. So we've got the stress type check, we've got the skill check, we've got pain point, not the pain point, we've got the 10 impulses of being more successful. Yeah. And we've also got, only in German till now, a webinar. Im Job weiterkommen, wenn es menschelt und schwierig ist. The next appointment is on the 26th of June. Free. Use the freebies. Use the impulses. Go to the blogs and read them for free. Yeah, that's the first thing you can do. If you then want to further dive into this whole exciting topic and make yourself more power competent, you can go on upandchange.com. You can download and get the stress type guide with all the do's and don'ts. You can get 24/7 help, like the conflict facilitator or the goal finder. Have a look, get inspired. There's so much next to podcasts, masterclasses, and whatever. Yeah, but that's the choice you can have from me. Or write me an email, lang@upandchange.com, and ask me your questions.
And I can only subscribe to it, Gabi, because I'm a real follower of yours. And also I'm a coach and have been trained in yoga and Feldenkrais and know how to really manage my reactions. Nevertheless, I learn a lot from your newsletters, and I thank you immensely for this wonderful workshop today, because I think we have got a glimpse into how we start to lead instead of reacting. So with this, I think we close for today. And we hope we see many of you during one of the next events WU Executive Academy is offering. You should simply check out WUEA Connect. And thank you, Gabi, once again.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, and I wish you all the best, and go out and master your challenges, because you can't prevent them anyway. So in this way, you can't do anything wrong. Take care, and hope to hear you soon and see you soon.
Very motivational, Gabi. I can't stand anymore on the chair, so I need to.
That's good. Body movement is
Thank you,
always
Gabi.
good. Yeah.
Cheers. Have a good afternoon.
Perfect.
Gabi.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for joining
Thank
us,
you.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.